After being president for 2 terms, Roosevelt chose not to run again. Instead, he supported William Howard Taft as the best person to take his place. Since Taft had been Roosevelt's Secretary of War before, people expected him to keep going with the same strategies. Taft was chosen president in 1909, and he kept some of Roosevelt's ideas about making the country better. During his time in office, he went to court against 90 trusts to keep competition fair. But Taft had to deal with a number of problems that made him less effective. Tariffs were one of the problems Taft ran into. He supported for the Paine Bill, which got through the House. It was a plan to cut tariffs. Unfortunately, the Senate passed a version that was not as strong. This was called the Payne-Aldrich tariff, and it did not greatly lower tariffs. Even though this was a setback, Taft signed the bill and supported it, which made progressives in his own party very angry. Conservation was another issue that came up. Gifford Pinchot, who was in charge of the U.S. Forest Service, pushed for wilderness places to be managed for both public use and private development. This way made it possible for businesses to make money on public land, like logging. When Taft picked Richard A. Ballinger to be Secretary of the Interior, environmentalists were very upset. Ballinger wanted to get the government to give up less land, encourage logging and mining, and even sell some land for private use. Pinchot criticized Ballinger's actions and said that he was putting money before managing resources well. Pinchot's criticism meant that Taft had to fire him from his job. There were 2 groups in the Republican Party, the progressives who wanted change and the conservatives who didn't want change. President Taft worked hard to bring together these 2 parts of his party. The fact that Taft backed political boss Joseph Cannon caused a lot of trouble. As Speaker of the House of Representatives, Cannon had a lot of power. He put people on committees based on his own views instead of the established order. Since Cannon had the power to decide which bills Congress worked on, progressive legislation was not taken into account. The argument over Cannon caused a split in the Republican Party. Republicans who wanted to change things tried to get rid of him as head of the House Rules Committee and were able to do so with the help of House Democrats. Some people were unhappy with Taft's policies. They blamed the Payne-Aldrich tariff for rising costs of living and questioned his commitment to conservation. This split in the Republican Party gave the Democrats a chance, and in the 1910 midterm elections, they won control of the House for the first time in almost 20 years. Teddy Roosevelt chose to run for president for a 3rd time in 1912. This split the Republican Party even more. Even though the party officially chose Taft, Roosevelt's followers started the Progressive Party, also called the Bull Moose Party, which ran on a reform platform. As a result, the Democrats, led by Woodrow Wilson, were in a better situation than the Republicans and had a good chance to win the presidency. In the 1912 election, the 4 main candidates were Wilson, Taft, Roosevelt, and Eugene V. Debs, a socialist. Wilson ran on a campaign called the New Freedom, which was a more liberal plan. Among his goals were to make antitrust rules stronger, reorganize the financial sector, and lower tariffs. Roosevelt and Wilson both wanted the government to have a bigger role in the business, but they had different ideas about how to do it. Roosevelt wanted the government to keep an eye on big businesses, but he didn't oppose all monopolies. On the other hand, Wilson fought for small businesses and free market competition, and he was against any kind of commercial monopoly or trust. Wilson was declared the winner of the 1912 election, which gave Democrats the majority in Congress. With about 75% of people in favor of economic reforms, Wilson had more power to carry out the changes he wanted to make when he became president.